Starting to get nasty.
We've got to get out of here.
January 2003. A captain and his ship are in trouble on the Atlantic Ocean. The crew aboard the Finnish cargo ship Camila struggles to get its 7,000 horsepower engine up and running. It's been breaking down all through the night.
When the engine stopped working, I woke up instantly with the notion that something was wrong.
The massive 12-cylinder engine has a badly damaged oil filter. So there's no oil to lubricate the engine's crankshaft. The crankshaft grinds against the bearings that connect it to the rotating pistons. That constant friction has caused the engine to seize up and die. Captain Markku Rakula knows that with no engine power, he and his 15 crew members are trapped. His 28-year-old third officer, Maiju Sari, loves the adventure of working on the high seas. But this is a new and frightening experience.
Coffee, do you want one?
When we realized that the engine couldn't be fixed, I remember thinking, this is an impossible situation. I thought to myself, now something is going to happen and there's nothing I can do about it. I felt numb at that moment.
The Camila is stranded more than 450 kilometers from the nearest port, St. John's. The Grand Banks off the east coast of Canada is the last place you want engine failure. The water here is shallow. A shallow seabed creates massive waves. The area is also known for its unpredictable weather. More than 7,000 ships have sunk in these waters over the centuries. And now, even worse news is rolling in.
And tell him to double check with Esco. Maiju?
Just a sec. Doesn't look good. Coming straight for us.
We've run out of time.
A cyclone is approaching from the southwest. Winds will hit 150 kilometers an hour. Waves will reach 24 meters, enough to sink the stricken Camila. The storm is still hours away, but Captain Rakula knows that help is also far away. Anyone who tries to rescue his crew will have to outrace the storm. Rakula is forced to consider all options for escape. The nearest tugboat is 20 hours away, but it's his best hope.
We're going to have to try for a tug.
Tugboat? Out this far in this? You really think that...
Of course.
Even though I knew that our situation was uncertain, I could not show it, or else everyone would start worrying, and that would lead to panic.
Because the Camila is unable to move forward, it has no resistance against the power of the storm. When the cyclone's waves hit this shallow floor, their energy gets compressed, creating huge breaking waves. which can smash windows, shift cargo, and potentially even turn the ship upside down.
The waves come in like this and beat and shake you. And there is nothing you can do about it.
Be right here on top of us. One thing's for sure. We've got to get out of here. I'll call the owners.
North 46, 55, 1. West 46, 49, 8.
This is Mayu Sari's first job as an officer. During her 6-year sailing career, she has never had to fear for her life. Until now.
When we realized that the storm would hit us if we didn't get out of its way, I had to switch into a certain mental mode in order to cope with the situation. Because even if something was going to happen to us, I couldn't start crying there or panicking.
Starting to get nasty. Waves, 6, maybe 7 meters.
If a tugboat's going to save them, it will have to outrace the storm.
Hey, the engine won't be fixed for 24 hours, so we're looking for a tug.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good, thanks.
What'd they say?
They're going to try to send us a tug.
Great.
Yeah.
So how's it looking out there?
It's a big low-pressure system moving in from the east. It's going to be poor visibility, high winds. Waves are going to be very big.
More than 600 kilometers from the stranded Camila is home base for 103 Search and Rescue Squadron. Veteran helicopter pilot Major Gilbert Thibault arrives on duty.
We are asked to go in situations that are extremes, and we have to make decisions also that may mean somebody's gonna live or somebody's gonna die.
In the coming hours, Thibault will face many life and death decisions as he and his team put their lives on the line to save 16 sailors. The Camila has now been stranded for 2 hours. The storm is moving closer.
Okay, yeah, will do. Right, thanks.
There are no tugboats close enough to get to the Camila before the storm hits. Captain Rackala will have to find another way to save the lives of his crew.
We could not afford to take the risk of staying there in a storm of this magnitude, and then in the morning to have to check whether we were afloat or had drowned.
He now faces the moment every skipper dreads.
When I started to make a decision about abandoning the ship, it was certainly the toughest decision of my life and of my entire sailing career.
Rescue Center Halifax to Camila.
Go ahead, Halifax.
Please state your present coordinates.
46, 56, 8, north. 46, 47, 1, west.
You got that?
Siinä oli yksi hetki, kun
There was a moment when I was quite terrified. It happened when the Coast Guard asked how many people our life rafts can take. Then I thought if we have to go on those rafts, in that weather, that will be really serious. But somehow I managed to wipe these thoughts from my mind and calm myself down.
The ship is now rocking so uncontrollably that it's simply not possible to attempt escape in the lifeboats.
We cannot stay here, but lifeboats are not an option.
What we're going to do is send a helicopter to you.
There's 16 of us!
Your situation has been designated an M1 emergency.
An M1 emergency. Top priority because the Camilla's crew is in danger of injury or death.
Now we see.
The hopes of rescue for Captain Rakala, Third Officer Sari, and the rest of the crew now hinge on a helicopter reaching them before the storm hits. But the nearest helicopter is in Gander, 618 kilometers away. St. John's is the closest point of land. The entire journey is more than 1,000 kilometers. On top of that, the helicopter will have to hover for more than an hour to hoist the 16 sailors to safety. It's impossible without refueling.
Urgent. Cormorant standby crew report to operations immediately. Cormorant standby crew report to operations immediately.
Okay, guys. We have got a cargo vessel out of Finland. They've lost their engine. She's almost 450 kilometers offshore from St. John's.
This mission will push men and machine to the limit. Major Thibault's co-pilot is Captain Andrew Mercer. Mercer spent years flying tactical helicopters around the world. But on this six-man team, he's the new kid on the block.
Obviously, we can't get there and back on a full tank.
Hibernia. It's probably going to be our best bet.
Major Thibault is counting on a fuel stop at the Hibernia oil drilling platform, located 150 kilometers from the Camilla. It will enable the helicopter to make the entire round trip.
As far as time on scene, I know you guys would like as much as possible.
Major Thibault has calculated exactly how much time they can spend on the rescue itself and still have enough fuel to get back to home base.
Necessary goes. By my calculation, I can give you 75 minutes.
That's less than 5 minutes to hoist each of the 16 sailors.
In 30 minutes?
With each passing minute, weather conditions deteriorate as the storm moves closer to the stricken vessel. Before abandoning ship, the crew closes all doors and conduits in order to make the Camilla as watertight as possible. Third Officer Mayu Sari notifies everyone of the decision to abandon ship.
Survival suits ready. We're abandoning ship. Hey, everybody, wake up! Let's go! Let's go!
Back at the base, Major Thibault is relying on this impressive piece of machinery to save the lives of the sailors. The newly acquired CH-149 Cormorant. He has stripped excess equipment from the helicopter to make room for 16 passengers. He must eliminate all unnecessary weight. The lighter the load, the more fuel they can carry. And Thibault knows that every drop will count on this mission.
An helicopter is not like a car. You cannot run out of fuel and park it on the side of the road. I mean, running out of fuel is not an option.
With little to do but wait, Captain Rakala considers the consequences of his decision.
Making a decision is sometimes a little difficult, but if you make right decisions, then anyone who knows about sailing will know that this guy is not dumb. He has been able to make the right decision at a critical moment. But if you make wrong decisions, after that your career may be gone as well.
Sergeant Rob Vedito will be responsible for operating the rescue hoist. Before takeoff, he double-checks to make sure that this lifeline is in perfect working order.
Right hand out is approved. Surface winds are 310, 15, gusting 20 knots. Clear takeoff from the south pad.
The Cyclone is closing in on the Camila. For the rescuers, the race is on to get there first.
I would lie to you if the adrenaline's not pumping. The adrenaline is definitely pumping, and your mind is rushing and going through all these different scenarios. How can I make it better? Where can I go for fuel? Do I need medical? It just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. You just keep going through the scenario, going through problems, coming up with answers, solutions. It's just a constant, your head's going all the time until it's done at the end.
For Major Thibault, the Cormorant is the ultimate flying machine. Its 3 powerful turbine engines produce an incredible 6,400 horsepower.
I often compare the Cormorant to an F1 race car, a machine with that much technology in it, and it's also a machine that you push to its limit fairly often in the job we do.
The Cormorant-shaped rotor blades, protected by titanium strips along the edge, improve lift and increase speed. It also means this helicopter can operate successfully in extremely high winds. But even the Cormorant has its limits. If they get caught in the approaching cyclone, Major Thibault will have to abort the mission. Rescue headquarters has warned Captain Rakala that it's not certain the helicopter can get to the Camila.
Of course, there was a sense of distress when we were told that the helicopter may not be able to come if the wind picks up. And there was naturally a sense of uncertainty on the ship about what was really going to happen. Will they be able to get us out of there, or will they not be able to get us out?
Because the crew is in danger, the ship's owners have already contacted the families of everyone on board.
Yksi ehkä pahimmista tunteista, mitä tuli sitten. One of the worst feelings was the fact that my parents and sister knew about my situation, but I couldn't contact them to tell them how it's going so far. It was really bad to think about how they must have felt when they didn't really know anything. Well, other than the fact that the ship was in distress, at sea, in a storm. I started reading a book to get my mind away from it, so that I would not panic. I sat around, took deep breaths, and calmed myself down. Not to do anything stupid, like get nervous or overreact.
Hengittelin rauhallisesti ja rauhoittelin itseäni, että nyt ei saa tehdä mitään typerää. Ei saa hermostua eikä ylireagoida.
It did help me. It was like a meditation.
Ikään kuin meditaation omainen
The pilot's plan to refuel at the Hibernia oil rig is shattered. They've just been informed that Hibernia can't supply them with fuel.
Well, that's too bad. For us. Okay, over. Go figure, huh? Hibernia out of fuel.
We got information saying that the Hibernia had run out of fuel, and being the biggest oil producer out there, it was kind of just ironic that they didn't have the fuel for us.
Major Thibault was forced to divert to another oil rig to refuel.
We'll make our way over to the Henry Goodrich.
The Cormorant heads for the Henry Goodrich drilling platform, an additional 35 kilometers away from the Camilla. The diversion will add 10 minutes to the journey. That means less time for the rescue itself. And now there's no hope of beating the storm. It's closing in at a rate of 85 kilometers an hour. The Henry Goodrich is a floating rig, not anchored to the seabed. So landing in high winds is extremely dangerous. Thibault will not be able to control the landing from his side of the helicopter.
Never landed on a floating rig before, huh? It's different.
So to keep the helicopter into wind and to keep visual with the platform, I had to let Andrew fly. I didn't have the references on my side.
Co-pilot Mercer has never landed on a floating platform before. It's a rare and difficult operation that requires enormous skill and nerves of steel, a critical moment to capture on video. One of the search and rescue technicians starts the camera rolling as co-pilot Mercer closes in on the rig.
All yours, Andrew. I'll let them know we're coming in. Rescue 911 to Goodrich. Seeking permission to land for refueling, over.
The Cormorant has landed. But now the helicopter's in danger of being blown off the platform. In order to prevent this, Mercer has to reverse the angle of the rotor blade, a technique known as negative pitch. This creates a downward force and pushes the helicopter onto the landing pad.
We actually sucked ourselves onto the oil rig. It's a really neat thing that we can do. I don't think very many actually helicopters can do that.
On the Camilla, Captain Rakala prepares to abandon ship.
Yes, one can't help but wonder what my wife was thinking and whether we would ever see each other again in this world. When this thought came, I just had to push it to the back of my mind because I had to look after things at hand and then think about it again when the right time came.
Appreciate the top up.
Glad to be of help, Major. Best of luck out there.
Thanks. We'll need it.
After the stop on the oil platform, the Cormorant has just enough fuel to get them to the Camilla, hover for 75 minutes to hoist the stranded crew to safety, and fly 477 kilometers to the nearest land at St. John's. But then, just before takeoff, the unthinkable happens.
Okay, we're set. Com failure. We've got a com failure. Switching over to main system. Andrew, can you read me? Rob, can you hear me?
The Cormorant's complex fiber optic communication system has stopped working.
Rob, can you hear me?
I'm not getting you.
Okay, we're gonna do this by the book. We're gonna run a full system check.
While Thibault and Mercer can talk to each other, they can't communicate with flight engineer Rob Vedito in the back, and they have to be able to talk to him to execute the hoisting operations.
With Combreaker 3 AC bus. Can you read me now, Rob? Combreaker 2 on DC bus. Combreaker 3 on DC bus.
Now the Major has a gut-wrenching decision to make. Press on or abort the mission altogether.
This is not good. Breaker 3, AC bus. Can you hear me now, Rob? Okay. Let's run everything twice. Breaker 3, DC bus.
The first thing that came in our head was that we won't be able to do this. You know, if we cannot communicate, there's no way we're going to be able to recover these people. So the first thing, I think, for all the crew members was, you know, we're stuck. We're going to have to go back.
There's only an hour and 40 minutes until sunset. Barely enough time to get to the Camilla and do a 75-minute hoisting operation. Thibault and Mercer systematically reset all the breakers on board.
Rob, anything?
Can you hear me, Rob? Gotcha, Major. Loud and clear.
Eventually, success.
We're back. Let's get moving here.
The delay has cost another precious 15 minutes.
When I left my cabin for the last time, I had those things we were allowed to take with us, a few papers and a passport. I had packed my suitcase and I think I'd made my bed, just in case if the ship doesn't sink, somebody might come and see how I had lived there.
Captain Rakula orders everyone to put on their survival suits. These dry suits are waterproof. They're made with neoprene, a synthetic rubber that contains millions of tiny air bubbles. The bubbles act as an insulator and help with buoyancy. Dry suits provide warmth by protecting the clothing beneath from wind and water. Without the suit, the bitterly cold water of the Atlantic would kill them.
The last thing I wrote in the logbook on the command bridge was, of course, that most difficult fact, that we are now going to abandon the ship.
Captain Rakula is now certain the ship and its cargo are doomed. He relays the grim news to the ship's owners in Finland.
You dial, huh? Yeah.
Sure. Niin me puettiin ne pelastuspuvut sitten niinku.
It was pretty difficult with that suit. He would hold the phone and I would push the buttons and he would talk. It was a strange feeling that this may be the last time they'd hear from us.
Me sitten mennään tonne alas, että mikä on tilanne ja...
Rakula here!
ETA 5 minutes on scene. Andrew, get the captain.
As the Cormorant closes in on the Camilla, the search and rescue technicians make final preparations.
Rescue 911 to Camilla.
Rescue 911 to Camilla.
This is Camilla, go ahead, 911.
Rescue helicopter approximately 5 minutes from you. All crew should gather on deck.
Tell them everyone's down there, we're just on our way.
We're on our way.
Hang in there, over.
Hey, we should go.
One last smoke. After this trip, I quit.
There's now just over an hour of daylight left. After flying for 3.5 hours, Thibault and Mercer catch their first sight of the stranded ship. From a distance, the situation doesn't look life-threatening. But as they move in, it becomes obvious that this operation will test Thibault's helicopter and crew to the limit.
Suddenly rises this huge 300 foot piece of metal is out of control. Very slowly, it's not spinning like a cork, it's moving very slowly, rolling, twisting, corking, sliding up and down the waves. And you suddenly realize this is not a stable platform. We have to rescue 16 people.
The storm is closing in. Scientists call this type of storm a meteorological bomb because it is intensifying at such an explosive rate. Within a few short hours, its winds have more than doubled in force from 35 to 75 kilometers per hour, with its highest waves reaching over 80 feet, the height of a 7-story building.
My impression was that these guys were not gonna make it through the night, and we had to take them off. Otherwise, that was the end for them.
Major Thibault has a huge challenge. He has to figure out how to get as close as possible in order to lower his men onto the moving target. But if he flies too low, the cormorant could run into the mast of the tossing ship with deadly results.
When the helicopter did arrive, I was naturally very excited that now we are finally getting out of here.
This is gonna be tough. I'm gonna swing around for another look.
The jubilation on board the Camila doesn't last long.
But all of a sudden it circled the boat and then headed away from us. Well, that is when we all thought, hey, wait a minute, has the wind now gotten so bad that we won't be taken away from here?
The sailors are certain the helicopter is abandoning them, their one and only hope of escape vanishing on the horizon. Major Thibault circles around to check out potential obstacles and determine his best plan of attack. He has precious few seconds to decide if a rescue is feasible. Thibault must keep the helicopter at a constant equal distance from the ship. To achieve this, he must make the helicopter rise and fall with the waves. 2 search and rescue technicians will be lowered onto the deck. One man will control the guide cable to reduce swaying during the hoisting. The other, Corporal Scott Elliston, will hook each sailor to the hoist and ride back up to the helicopter with them, one at a time.
Kind of thinking it's a big boat, it's moving, it's dead in the water, so it's going to be a different challenge. It's not facing straight into the seas where it's a more controlled situation that we're used to. It's rolling differently, which means as things move and we're on the hoist, there's a potential for us to be, banged off part of the boat or hit or something. So you're kind of thinking of how you're going to do the business and, sometimes what might go wrong.
The success or failure of this mission will come down to split-second timing. That's where flight engineer Rob Vedito plays a crucial role. He has the best view of the deck. He must tell Thibault when the search and rescue technician has landed safely and is ready to begin the hoist. As Vedito counts down, the rhythm of his voice signals how close the hoist is to its target.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Steady. Ease down.
Rescue 911 to Camila, over.
Go on, 911!
We need you to move your crew forward to the bow of the ship, over.
Hey! It's pretty icy over here!
Me hoipereltiin sitten ryhmässä sieltä.
We staggered to the front while the boat was going up and down, and the survival suits were quite slippery, so we had to walk carefully. I took the safest route to go across the deck. I held onto the railings all the time so that I would not slide back and forth. It was tough.
Liikkuminen oli vähän hankalaa siinä vaiheessa.
The first rescuer is now on deck, controlling the guide cable. It's time for Corporal Scott Elliston to start his descent.
You definitely feel vulnerable on the end of the cable, whether you're going to potentially get banged into something or if the helicopter has a malfunction and has to set down on the ground or whatever, if it's going to end up going down. You're on the end of a cable attached to the helicopter, so you're going to get dragged along with it. So you're definitely exposed when you're on the end of the hook.
Timing here is crucial. Getting it wrong could mean serious injury for Elliston or one of the sailors.
Okay, sir, raise your arm. When we get up there, I'll guide you in. Do not reach out at any time, okay? Here we go.
I had some notion that the crew must have been a little bit scared, since no one had ever been hoisted by a wire into a roaring helicopter. And I can understand it well, since I myself felt some horror looking at that thin wire. How could it possibly carry two men?
The cable may look flimsy. It is less than 5 millimeters in diameter. In fact, it can lift more than 800 kilos at a time. To maintain an equal distance between the ship and the helicopter, Thibault has to constantly increase and decrease power. Because the power is changing, adjustments are required to all the other controls. The helicopter is never stable.
Keep in mind that that boat is rocking like a chair, like 45 degrees each way, and it's moving up and down. So you're following that boat through all that motion. And then, if you don't anticipate properly, the boat starts to rise up again, and now it's coming towards you, so you have to move the helicopter back up.
One by one, the crew are lifted into the cormorant. There are still 6 sailors left on deck, and only enough fuel to hover for another 25 minutes. Right now, Major Thibault has another challenge. The power demand on the engines is constantly changing. To maintain the hovering position, the engines are working at 100% capacity. Now and then, strong crosswinds blow into the rotors, causing problems for Thibault.
Enough to hold up here, boys. Let's go. Keep it moving.
The crosswinds create something called translational lift. When that happens, the engine doesn't have to work nearly as hard. This constant change causes massive vibration and puts enormous physical strain on both the helicopter and Thibault.
Well, it's very tiring, obviously. There's a lot of turbulence. We're moving a lot. It's a very demanding, not only mentally, but physically.
Do not reach out at any time, okay?
Scott Elliston prepares the 11th sailor for liftoff. 5 remain to be saved. Thibault is keeping a close eye on his fuel gauge. He's running out of daylight and out of fuel. Soon there will be no choice but to leave the Camila whether or not there are any sailors left on the ship. Even for a veteran like Thibault, the pressure is huge.
Saying that there's never any emotion would be probably lying. There's always emotion. Let's put it this way. If one of our family member was in there, it would probably be impossible to make a reasonable decision. So in many ways, I believe not knowing the people you're helping is probably what allows you to make the right decision because it's always very difficult and you have to go step by step very slowly and very safely.
Tietysti siinä on muita.
We had to be calm. We couldn't show that we were scared or in panic because there's always that danger of fear being contagious. And now we had so little waiting time left that we needed to take it easy.
Save a seat for me, Mayu!
Kun tuli mun vuoro mennä siihen vaijerille ja...
When it was my turn to go to the cable, I already knew what to do. I just tried to do what the guy told me. When we were going up, I remember wondering what's going on in this guy's head. We didn't really talk that much on the way up to the helicopter. But I wasn't scared at that time anymore because it was obvious they knew what they were doing.
Rob, tell Scott we have 10 minutes of fuel left.
The helicopter has been hovering over the thrashing boat for more than an hour. The winds are increasing, the waves are getting bigger, and daylight is beginning to fade.
Now you get the pressure on the radio. They're like, okay, where are you at? We got to get going. So then it starts getting even more pressure. Now you're rushing even more because now you're down to the wire where you have to get it done.
Kun mä olin siellä helikopterissa, niin siinä oli semmoinen pallon muoto.
When I was in the helicopter, I looked through this rounded window, and I tried to look one last time. And I did see it down there, floating. And it hurt to see it over there, rocking alone. It felt like, how did we dare to leave it there alone in the dark sea with a storm coming?
The rescued sailors don't realize that up in the cockpit, Thibault and Mercer are now trying to deal with a new danger.
It's killing us.
The additional weight of the sailors in the back, combined with the demand on the engine in hover mode, is causing decay or drooping on the rotors. They are actually slowing down.
Last thing you want to hear is rotor. When you hear the warning, rotor, 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 you know that the helicopter's run out of power.
And if you're losing power and the speed of the rotor drops, you know where you're going. You're not flying anymore.
But this time, when the dust was upon us, the storm was coming upon us, you're getting the last couple guys in.
Slowing down of the rotors is critical. Thibault can continue with the mission or abort. The fate of those remaining on the ship is in his hands. He has very little time to decide.
Just going to have to ignore it.
Thibault takes a chance and ignores the warning. Captain Rakala and the two rescuers are still on the deck.
You notice the winds were picking up. It was getting worse. The winds were stronger. The boat was rolling more. So it definitely became more of a challenge as the mission went on.
Captain Rakala has watched his entire crew of 15 ascend to safety. After more than an hour on the ship's icy bow, it's his turn.
It was, to say the least, a little bit difficult to run to the hoist guy. You had to always watch whether the deck was like this or if it was like this. And when the deck was level, you had to run and be careful not to start running when the deck was tilting. The deck had to be level, and then you would go. When I was a young boy, I naturally was hoping that, if and when I went to sea, that I would never have to abandon ship. But that's what happened. And of all things, on a helicopter. My last look at Camila was when I sat in the doorway of the helicopter, just before going in to sit down. I thought, this is where you'll be left rocking. It is a pity that we had to leave, but there was no choice.
Thibault and his team complete the evacuation in 70 minutes. The Cormorant has just enough fuel to get to St. John's. As the helicopter picks up speed, the drooping rotors return to normal, but the storm is closing in. The sailors settle in for what they hope will be an uneventful journey. With daylight fading, the flight home will be in total darkness and bitter cold.
Let's keep altitude at 200 feet. May as well avoid these headwinds. We might even save some gas. You know, it wasn't that long ago we wouldn't even be flying in these conditions.
The storm is closing in. Temperatures are dropping. Thibault and Mercer know that there's a real danger of ice building up on the rotors. The last thing you want on a helicopter.
Helicopters are not designed to fly in ice. When I was flying Army-type helicopters, you avoided it like the plague. You hit a cloud or ice and you did a 180, you returned back.
Not anymore. The Cormorant is equipped with special de-icing equipment called a Rotor Ice Protection Unit, or RIPU for short. The RIPU system transfers heat into the rotors to prevent ice from building up. But there is a trade-off. De-icing draws a huge amount of power that has to come from somewhere. Ice is building rapidly on the rotors. The RIPU is sucking up power to get rid of it, and the Cormorant is working to the max to keep its heavy load aloft. Something's got to give. The chopper is using so much power that Mercer's control panel, all the instruments he needs for navigation, dies.
Using EIS screens. Prepare to take over. Yeah, standing by. Just give it a second.
So now we're flying at night, low level over the ocean, in freezing rain and snow, and then to lose your instruments is quite something.
I'm going to try switching my signal generators over to you. Here we go.
Thibault transfers the generators from his control panel over to Mercer's side of the helicopter.
Essentially, I was using now his instruments or his signal generator to provide input into my screens.
Oh, that's one way to get the adrenaline pumping, huh? It seems to be
The Cormorant heads for St. John's, 477 kilometers away. The passengers have no idea what their pilots have been dealing with in the cockpit.
We never knew a thing about that. We couldn't even hear any sign that the helicopter might have had any kind of trouble. And I have the feeling that had we known, we would surely have thought, okay, we're going from the frying pan into the fire. "13 hours after the Camilla's engine died, the Cormorant finally touches down in St. John's. It's been the longest day of Captain Rakula's life. It felt wonderful when the helicopter finally landed at the airport and we were able to walk on dry land, so to speak, without getting our feet wet. It was a really fantastic feeling.
From Major Thibault and 103 Search and Rescue Squadron, it's all souls saved. Mission accomplished. A flash flood trapped 7 French cavers 100 meters underground. As the water rises, it forces the men up against the cave roof. There is no escape. In southern France, a freak storm turns a weekend caving adventure into a life and death struggle. 7 men scramble into their life rafts and wait helplessly as the floodwaters force them relentlessly upward. The air pocket that's keeping them alive is shrinking. If the water keeps rising, it will crush them into the cave's ceiling and drown them. Nicolas Violande is on his first overnight caving expedition. It is a terrifying initiation.
I was 19 years old at the time. Why, at the beginning of my life, am I going to die here?
Nicolas is the youngest member of the team. He and 6 more experienced cavers have been planning this expedition for months. All of them are from the nearby town of Gramat. They all share one passion: exploring the planet's underground frontiers. The Vitarelle cave system is right in their backyard. It stretches for 14 kilometers beneath the fields and forests around Gramat. It's a giant subterranean network of caverns, with an underground river and caves up to 40 meters tall. There's only one entrance. This is how Nicolas and the others have descended into Vitarelle. The entry point is a narrow, 40-meter deep well that connects with the underground river. At the start of the expedition, the river is just ankle deep in most sections. In other areas, they need rafts to make their way through the deeper water.
Our goal was to follow the underground river and check out parts of the cave that hadn't been explored in 15 or 20 years.
2 days into their expedition, a freak wave of violent thunderstorms sweeps through the region. Dumping 62 millimeters of rain in just 12 hours. The underground river rises quickly, flooding the cave and blocking the cavers' only escape route. Nicolas and the 6 other cavers have been trapped for most of the day. They huddle together just 1.5 meters from the roof of the cave.
There were no sounds anymore, no noises. It was a silent lake that was rising little by little.
Listen, guys. If we get out of this...
Nicolas tries to boost the group's morale. He tells his friend that he'll buy them all a car if they get out alive. He's only half serious.
We were supposed to meet up with another group of cavers the next day. So once the water rose, we knew our families would sound the alarm and contact the rescuers.
300 kilometers away in another cave system, Bernard Tort leads a rescue training exercise. Bernard is a world-renowned caver with nearly 2 decades of experience. Now his expertise is urgently needed in France's biggest ever cave rescue attempt.
Hello?
We got a phone call that there was a group of 7 people trapped in the Vitarelle. It's a huge cave system, and the flow of the river there gets incredibly powerful when there are massive floods. It becomes really dangerous. So we took this call very seriously. We knew we had a potentially tragic situation on our hands.
For the men trapped in their life rafts, the hours pass slowly and painfully. At 8 to 10 degrees Celsius, the water is bone-chillingly cold.
We felt abandoned. We asked, why did this happen to us?
The only thing keeping them alive is a pressurized pocket of air between the water and the top of the cavern. The men know their situation is precarious. Any change in the pressure inside the cave could make the water rise suddenly.
I was asking myself, will I have enough air to breathe? It was either we get out, or we will be left to die.
The men must use their lamps sparingly. The lamps burn a flammable gas to make light, and this process consumes precious oxygen. With every breath, they rob the tiny air pocket of its life-saving oxygen. And every time they exhale, they fill the air chamber with increasing amounts of deadly carbon dioxide. As carbon dioxide levels accumulate in the body, breathing accelerates, heart rate increases, tissue fluids become acidic. Extremely high levels of CO2 can cause respiratory paralysis, convulsions, coma, even death. Computer technician Philippe Verger is the team's technical expert. He uses an altimeter to check the air pressure in the bubble. He knows that as long as the pressure remains stable, the water will not rise or drop suddenly. Philippe reports that the pressure is high and holding for the moment. But any change in another part of the river could eliminate their safe haven in seconds. In the town of Gramat, family and friends of the cavers are worried. They fear that the torrential rains have turned the Vitarelle cave system into a death trap. Rescuers set up headquarters on a military base above the cave system. Rescue groups from across the country converge on the small town. But because the entrance well is flooded, they are unable to get down in the caves. One of the key rescuers to arrive on the scene is Guy Riviera.
My feeling is it might be somewhere between here and here. My concern is that can you speak to them 2 months ago?
He's a veteran advisor with the country's caving rescue organization called Spilio Secours Français. More importantly, it's where he grew up and began caving as a boy.
Here's what we know. There's been a ton of rain. We have 7 cavers trapped underground, and they've got enough food to last them 3 days. We have to try and rescue them. But we know the only entrance is filled with water.
Nicolas Violand and his fellow cavers have now been trapped for almost 24 hours. So far, the air pressure has held steady. But they're in for the shock of their lives. Upstream in another part of the cave system, some debris breaks loose. As the blockage clears, there's a sudden, dangerous drop in air pressure, then a powerful surge of water.
The moment the water goes down, it goes down fast. Faster than it rose.
On a la cage thoracique qui est prise.
Our torsos were shaking and trembling. Our ears were blocked. You really had the impression you were squished into a bottle and being shaken in every direction.
As the water level drops, the men clamber onto a ledge that had been submerged until now.
We were worried. It was like a whirlpool that was going to suck us down underwater, bash us into the walls, and drown us in the current.
The sudden draining of the water disrupts the pressure in the gallery and creates a bizarre phenomenon. For a period of nearly 10 minutes, multiple waves batter the inside of the cavern.
The noise was absolutely infernal. We were really in the middle of the elements that were in a fury.
The unpredictable underground river presents a huge challenge for the rescuers. In order to conquer it, they desperately need the expertise of world caving specialist Bernard Tourt.
The cave system actually descends, and the river flows through it. So essentially, the current flows downward from the highest point to the lowest point.
He heads for Gramont with a special kayak ideal for this kind of rescue. The water has receded. The trapped cavers make camp on a 3-meter wide ledge. The waves have left them badly shaken.
Il fallait s'organiser.
We had to organize. We had to do something. We said to ourselves, survival starts right now. We had about 3 days of waiting. We figured it would take about 3 days for the water level to drop before we could head back out.
The men carefully ration the food that's left. Packets of soup, a few cereal bars, rice cakes, and some caramels.
Chicken curry. On a commencé à faire un peu le compte.
We started to tabulate what we had for supplies, what we had for light, how much water we had. We had a stalactite that ran with water, drip by drip, that we collected and purified with hydroclonazone tablets.
Bernard Tourt arrives at Viterel. By now, the floodwaters have receded. This means that Tourt can attempt to enter the cave system along with Guy Bariviera, the local expert.
Une fois que je suis arrivé sur place,
As soon as I arrived on site, I was updated on the situation, and we quickly made the decision to form a team that would include Guy Bariviera and myself.
qui serait constitué de Guy Bariviera et moi-même.
Rescuing the trapped men is the biggest challenge of Bernard's career. He and Guy will have to navigate a maze of dangerous caves and unexplored galleries to find the cavers. The rescuers know that the trapped cavers planned to go to some of the highest points of the system. If they made it that far, they might still be alive.
Donc l'eau est bien montée de 30 mètres.
Even though the water rose 30 meters at the lower end of the cave system, it didn't mean that it completely flooded the upper end. So, if the trapped cavers were up there when the water was rising, we had every hope of finding them in perfect health.
En parfaite santé.
Bernard and Guy prepare for their underground search with military precision, gearing up with the most sophisticated rescue equipment. This includes Bernard's special two-man inflatable kayak. Guy, who's already been underground on a scouting mission, tells Bernard that the current is very dangerous.
The objective of the mission was go to the furthest point possible in the cave system. We figured once the water started rising, the cavers would have moved camp, would have withdrawn to a higher part of the cavern.
So Bernard and I left on his customized raft with a lot of equipment to fight the current and to do a lot of climbing.
When Bernard and Guy descend into the cave system, they discover that the underground river is still raging in some passages. In others, it's flooded right to the ceiling. Making any headway among the jagged rocks is taxing and dangerous.
We had enough room between the roof and the surface of the water to move forward, but it was difficult because the water had a violently strong current.
After nearly 5 hours of slogging through the cave system, they're finally within striking distance of the cave called Salle du Cône. This is where Bernard and Guy hope the men are trapped, in the higher galleries. The only way to get to those galleries is to climb.
Imagine the Salle du Cône is a chamber that is pointed. So we arrived at a gallery that is situated at this level, and then we had to climb the slope towards the summit of the chamber. It was about a 15-meter climb to get up to the upper gallery.
It's a grueling 5-hour climb. The two men drag themselves forward, hauling heavy equipment and Bernard's inflatable kayak. When they finally reach the upper gallery, it's waterlogged, but otherwise empty, except for one disturbing sign that someone or something has passed through here.
Once we made it to the upper gallery of Salle du Cône, it's basically the highest point in the area. We looked around and noticed there were little bits of plastic stuck to the ceiling. That was incredibly disappointing and distressing because this meant the whole network had been filled with water. It was pretty tragic.
Guy and Bernard know that if the men were here, they would have drowned. If they're still alive, they have to be somewhere even higher in the cave system. The next big cave is Clé de Voûte, another 2 kilometers upstream. Bernard and Guy want to press ahead, but it's too dangerous. The water completely fills the low sections in front of them. They're forced to turn around and head back to rescue headquarters to devise a new plan. Nicolas and the other cavers can only wait. With no sense of time and no daylight, sleep comes in fits and bursts. Some sleep, others talk, and always they worry about the changing water level.
So basically, we went into survival mode. We figured it would be a good idea to eat every 12 hours. And we try to really conserve our energy. We had a stove to heat the water so that we could hydrate ourselves as well as warm ourselves. And we still had a bit of fuel for our lamps to eventually light the way out.
They fantasize about the perfect meal.
Almost immediately, the first thing that comes to mind is hunger.
They share and savor memories of great restaurant meals and favorite recipes.
All you think about is food. Eat, eat, eat. And so we had to be really careful and ration our meals. I remember we had one meal that consisted of a spoonful of curried rice, 15 milliliters of hot tea, a quarter of mandarin orange, and a rotten chestnut. That was a meal.
When Bernard and Guy resurface, the rescuers adopt a new strategy to speed up the search for the missing cavers. They tell their fellow rescuers that it's difficult and risky to make headway underground. They'll have to find a quicker way to get access to key caverns. It's time to bring in the heavy machinery. The topographers will try to pinpoint the location of caves that rescuers haven't been able to reach via the underground route. The drilling teams will punch through the earth to get direct access to the chambers below. Drilling should create new entry and exit points along the cave system. This will provide shortcuts for the rescuers and hopefully bring them within reach of the trapped cavers more safely and more quickly. Deciding exactly where to drill is a daunting task. Just 30 centimeters in the wrong direction can mean missing the entire cave system.
We needed 2 types of machines for the drilling operation. We needed drills that could go very deep to try to locate the river, and we also needed drills that could bore out a hole large enough in diameter for a person to fit through. That was essential.
Once started, the drilling teams hammer away at the rock day and night. At the same time, other rescuers try the underground route via the well, which is the cave's only natural entrance. They must work their way up the river to where they think the men could be trapped. The 7 trapped cavers have managed to hold on for almost a week.
What if it snowed in the valley?
But their situation is getting desperate.
It's totally impossible.
They're almost out of food. What's worse,
I just wish they knew. Can you imagine what your mother...
the water is rising again.
With news of the rising water, the fear flooded right back in. We checked the level quickly and saw the water kept on rising, and the current was getting stronger and stronger. And then the biggest fear for all of us was, we all looked up at the ceiling. Everyone said, no way. There's no way we're going in the rafts again. It was so horrible, so difficult physically, that we wouldn't survive a second flood.
Rescuers work around the clock to find the 7 missing cavers. Then the weather takes another disastrous turn. For the second time in a week, torrential rain hammers southern France. Water floods the cave entrance, shutting off all access. A team of rescuers is underground. Now they too are cut off by the rising water. Above ground, Bernard Tourt has to find a way to warn them, and fast. He scribbles a message on a notepad, attaches it to a bare lamp bulb and a phone, then sends it all down a small drill hole. He must draw the attention of his men to warn them of the dangerous new flooding.
So there was the phone, there was the lamp, and there was the message. And the objective of that was to stop them from going any further. We didn't want them to keep going back toward the entrance to Vitarelle, because we knew the water had risen there and they would have been trapped.
At first, Bernard gets no response from the team underground. He waits for 3 hours, then a welcome sign of life from the rescuers below. Bernard warns them to stay where they are until the floodwaters recede.
Okay. Got it.
There's nothing these trapped rescuers can do until the water level drops again, or the drilling crew enlarges the holes so a body can squeeze through. But they are safe.
Okay. And adjust your stuff.
Elsewhere in the cave system, Nicolas Violand and his 6 trapped colleagues have used up almost all the fuel for their headlamps. Even if the water level drops, they no longer have enough light or even the strength to walk out of the cave system on their own. Depression sets in.
We were really wishing the water wouldn't rise to that level again. For me, if that was the case, I would have probably let myself sink. It was a point at which we all wanted to abandon it, to let it all go.
On avait envie de tout abandonner, de tout lâcher.
Drilling teams work around the clock in the race to blast into the rock and enlarge the existing hole. Finally, the giant drill busts through.
Donc ça, c'était vraiment capital pour nous, ce forage. Donc c'est clair que une fois...
That was a major accomplishment for us. Once we created the new opening, it was like removing a whole piece of the cave network.
Tout un morceau du réseau.
But the rescue mission is far from over. Even though they've created a shortcut into the cave network, they're still not certain where the 7 missing men might be, or even if they are still alive. Time underground takes its toll on Nicolas and his fellow cavers. Their main preoccupation now is to fight off dehydration and hypothermia. And now there's another worry. Their supply of water purification tablets has almost run out.
J'étais pas fâché contre quelqu'un ou contre...
I wasn't mad at anyone. I was depressed. I felt abandoned. Abandoned by life completely.
Par la vie, quoi, tout simplement.
By now, the massive rescue effort is an international story. The media has descended on the quiet countryside. Bernard Tourt and his team now have to deal with a new set of challenges, especially how to prevent any bad news from leaking out.
Ça faisait près de 200-300 personnes qui venaient.
There were about 200 to 300 people who came from everywhere. And we had huge problems trying to control that. We heard that some reporters had plugged themselves into our telephone system. We had microphones planted in different command posts. We had people listening to our conversations on long-range microphones.
On avait des gens qui écoutaient avec des micros à longue distance les conversations qu'on pouvait avoir d'un côté ou de l'autre.
Bernard gathers his team and briefs them on the media storm. From now on, they must use coded messages when calling each other.
The
codes were used so that the media didn't understand the meaning of our words. So basically, we had time to organize and tell the families.
The rescuers' code, if they find the survivors alive, is "send us some food." If the cavers are found dead, the code is "send us some carbide." As the drilling teams zero in on the large gallery called Clé de Voûte, the calcified rock slows them down. This kind of rock has a lot of cracks and fissures, which can cause the drill head to bend or break.
With the help of a little camera that we sent down into each hole, we looked to see if there were any galleries. At the same time, we measured the speed of the air current, because if there's a strong air current, that means there's a direct connection with the larger cave network.
The drill has penetrated 28 meters down into the rock. Suddenly, it breaks through to a large cavity of air.
We immediately decided to widen the drilled hole.
Bernard and Guy hope the cavers are trapped here, somewhere in the galleries of Clé de Voûte. But the camera can find no signs of the missing men.
Underground, we always have the impression of hearing noises, bizarre noises, strange noises. Above all, when there's a river and the sound of water.
Whoa.
Nicolas thinks he hears a voice.
I hear it.
One of the others is also sure he's heard something.
Is it voices?
Au milieu des bruits,
in the midst of the sounds of water and the sounds of voices that we constantly heard, I believe I heard something a little bit stronger, a little bit louder.
Do you think they're coming?
They wonder if it might be rescuers. But for every moment of hope, there's a moment of despair when they realize it's just an illusion.
Something's holding them up.
Yeah.
On s'est dit,
We said, is it hallucination?
ça serait bizarre.
Two people at the same time? That would be bizarre. Is there someone who's trying to contact us?
Cherche à prendre contact avec.
Is there a rescue?
Est-ce qu'il y a des secours?
We looked to our left, looked to our right, but there was no one. There was nothing.
Personne d'autre. Tous les 7 ont pensé énormément.
All 7 of us thought a lot about our families. We thought they must be dead worried. After waiting several days like this, we all wished they still had hope. That they all thought, as long as we don't find them, they are still alive.
Qui sont encore en vie.
Les rescapés se connaissaient tous, mais les familles se connaissaient pour la majorité d'entre elles.
The survivors knew each other, but the families also knew one another. During the whole rescue, they tried to help us.
Essayer de nous aider, essayer de nous soutenir. Les équipes de foreurs, les équipes, toutes nos équipes de sauveteurs qui travaillaient en surface, travaillaient 24 heures sur 24.
The drilling teams, the rescue teams on the surface, we were all working 24 hours around the clock. It was raining, it was snowing, it was freezing. The support of the families was very important and helpful and kind to the rescuers. They made us coffee, they brought us food. They really tried to lend support to all levels of the rescue effort in the face of a daunting challenge.
Apporter leur soutien à tous les niveaux de la pyramide et certainement pas dans les endroits les plus confortables, dans les endroits où les difficultés étaient les plus rudes.
The rescuers are encouraged by the enlarged drill hole above Clé de Voûte. They know that if the trapped cavers are still alive, this is the most likely place to find them. Guy Riviera prepares to descend into the cave system once again.
Okay, good. All right.
Guy est rentré sur cette opération.
Guy went underground about 5 or 6 times, and every time he was down for long, complex, and intense missions. All that, combined with fatigue, puts a rescuer in danger of getting injured.
Pour moi, il était une personne.
For a guy like me, Guy was the most important resource. I had to send him on missions where his presence was indispensable.
Où sa présence allait être indispensable.
There were 2 possible routes, a main climb and a gallery that went off in another direction.
Guy unhooks his line. He will be joined by another rescuer. Guy believes that if he can discover a passageway through to the river, he'll be able to find the trapped men. If they're still alive, they've got to be close.
We went into that gallery with the hope of finding our survivors. We covered 300 meters. It was the first time that anyone disturbed the soil. And we didn't manage to find a direct link to the river. No sound, no sign of air currents.
Guy explores other areas of the cave system with no result and no sign of the river.
Finally, after many climbs and many obstructions, we reached a cavity of a few meters that blocked off yet another gallery. As soon as I got through the rockfall, there was an enormous sound. It was the sound of the river, the rumbling of water in the gallery, the resonance of that water. And also at the same time, there was the current of air that was tickling my nostrils.
The discovery of the underground river is a big breakthrough. Guy believes that the trapped cavers must now be within shouting distance.
We didn't hear them. There was no sign of life. But at least the search could now accelerate.
Let me move one of these.
They push boulders into the cavern below, hoping that the noise will spark a response from the trapped men. But again, there's no answer.
We'd been underground exploring for several hours by now.
Guy reports to the rescuers on the surface.
43, do you read me?
He tells them that although he has found the river and cleared a passageway to it, there is no sign of cavers and he cannot go any further.
We'd finally found a connection to the river at this end of the system, but the cavers weren't here, and so we needed to deploy new teams to look for them.
After more than a week of rescue work and 5 marathon underground missions, Guy is exhausted. He has no choice but to head back to the surface. When he arrives up top, he briefs the others about the shaft that leads to the underground river and where they need to go next. He's set the path, and a fresh team of rescuers can now continue the hunt for the trapped cavers.
A few hundred meters. Reach a giant shaft.
Cyril Arnaud is a member of the next unit going in.
Okay.
Guy's discovery of the shaft leading to the river was huge for us. We now had a new access point where we could quickly put our feet back in the river.
At this point, every minute counts. There has been no word from the trapped cavers for almost 200 hours. There's no evidence that they have survived the floodwaters. Cyril's team plows forward. They see a bend up ahead.
I think it was about 8 or 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. Everyone was in their sleeping bags. And then distinctly I heard a voice. Someone who was talking to someone else. There, I felt my stomach going nuts. My throat closed.
The 7 cavers have been trapped for 9 days. They are so weak and disoriented that they can't even tell if the sounds they hear are real.
There it is again. Et là, à ce moment-là,
And at that moment, everyone yelled with all their lungs.
tous ses poumons. Oh! Et c'est les quelques secondes qui suivent.
Then we waited. All 7 of us. Stressed, tense, shivering on edge. And then we heard
La réponse.
the answer we were waiting for 10 days.
Ça y est. La sensation qu'on a eue.
When we saw the rescuers arrive later, the sensation was unimaginable.
Inimaginable.
After 9 days trapped 100 meters underground, Nicolas and his friends now know they are going to get out of the cave alive. To celebrate, they present the rescuers with one of the stale pieces of cake they've been saving.
It was contact with another human being. To know that we were not forgotten, not abandoned, and finally that we would get out.
Though the men have been found alive, Cyril decides not to call up with the code.
Any word yet?
He'd rather deliver the news personally to Bernard.
Alors, ça a été fait dans un seul but.
He did that for one reason only, to keep the information as confidential as possible. Because we knew, on the surface, there were a lot of people listening in on our comm systems, and if they decoded our message, it could have caused some serious problems.
L'interprétation de nos données codées aurait éventuellement pu poser des problèmes.
In the middle of the night, on the 10th day, the cavers begin to emerge from the bowels of Vitarelle. Nicolas Violande is the first to be winched to the surface.
I could never thank enough all of the people who took part in the rescue. It will forever be etched in my memory, in my eyes. We'll always remember those first images of the rescuers looking at us, seeing us alive at the end of 10 days. 10 days of anxiety. What can I do to thank them? You'd need more than one lifetime for that.
It was an immense joy for me when we finally found them. I was a bit disappointed that I wasn't the one who actually met them underground, but to see them a little later when they came out was fantastic.
This operation was the biggest and longest rescue effort ever in France. Obviously, the high point of it is that we found the 7 men alive. For me, it will always be one of those experiences that is totally extraordinary.
After the rescue, Nicolas became an SSF rescuer himself, as did several other cavers.
An experience like the one we went through, it certainly leaves a mark on your life. At the time, I was 19 years old. I didn't know much about life. It taught me a lot. It taught me personally to live more intensely, to pay attention to my choices, and to pay attention to my friends, to respect life. To build ties with everyone, because it could happen to anybody.
Speleology is the last activity in the world that allows us to uncover territories completely untouched by civilization. It's fabulous. All the mountains have already been climbed by one route or another, but underground there's still much to discover. Today we still find new networks of 30, 40, even 50 kilometers.
Vitarelle is now officially sealed off from the world. The military zone is closed to cavers. No one will explore the cave system anytime soon. That is, unless cavers can find a new way in. To this day, many continue to search for that possible fissure, that possible crack that will lead them back down into the abyss.
If tomorrow we find a new entrance to that network, I will be the first to return.
A hurricane descends. New Orleans is on the run. At Tulane Hospital, there's no escape for the critically ill.
All visitors are advised to now leave the hospital.
Those on life support can't leave. If the power fails, they die.
New Orleans faces one of the worst storms of the century, Hurricane Katrina.
Within hours, a safe haven will become a prison for the patients and those who care for them.
Look, I can't. Okay, look, we're not going. We're not leaving our baby.
Hurricane Katrina rages across Louisiana. In New Orleans, Tulane Medical Center braces for the worst. Dr. Bob Asciutto is on call, staying overnight at Tulane. He's jolted awake by the sound of breaking windows.
I went to my door to open it, and it was pulled out of my hand. I felt this force pulling me towards a window that was now broken. And I could see the air currents going out the window, along with a fair number of debris that was in the laboratory.
Several colleagues struggle to pull him to safety. The hurricane knocks out the city's power. Hospital emergency generators kick in. Dr. Asciutto heads straight for the intensive care unit.
Well, the hallways were very quiet. There was a calmness that was eerie. Even though outside the building, this horrific storm was going on, inside there was this very strange claustrophobic feeling of warmth, sweating. I actually felt my heart pounding.
Dr. Asciutto is responsible for several critically ill children. If their life support machines fail, they will die.
How's she doing? Let's have a listen here.
He's relieved to find all his patients unharmed, including Drew Schaff, a newborn baby recovering from heart surgery.
Drew was a very seriously ill infant. She was on a ventilator, was on various heart medications to allow the heart to beat properly.
Drew's parents, Steve and Brandy Schaff, live 200 kilometers away. But they haven't been home since their baby was rushed to hospital more than a week ago.
It was 11 o'clock at night, and she was just fussing, and then she turned bluish gray and stopped breathing, and we rushed her to the hospital.
Before the hurricane struck, all patients' families were asked to leave the hospital.
I can't. Okay, look, we're not leaving. We're not leaving our baby.
Brandy simply refused.
I knew that I was not leaving my baby by herself in a city that I didn't even live in.
All right, how you doing, William?
Dr. Asciutto's patients and all others on life support have been moved onto the same floor, so staff can watch them constantly. One of the patients most at risk is 15-year-old William Wilson. He depends on a huge machine to keep blood pumping through his body. Without it, he will die within minutes. During the 10 months William's been waiting for a heart transplant, Nurse Jean Braham has become his friend and confidant.
You have rather a thin boy with 4 garden hoses, essentially, coming out of him. It was a little science fiction-esque.
Hey, Gene, looks like we both get a workout.
If not for that, he was your average 15-year-old boy.
In the light of day, an eerie calm engulfs New Orleans. It looks like the hospital's disaster plan is working. In reality, a bigger and deadlier crisis is unfolding. New Orleans is built on land below sea level. The day Hurricane Katrina reaches landfall, several of the levees protecting the city weaken and then fail. By evening, the flood has closed in on Tulane Hospital. Water seeps into the building and floods the ground floor. The hospital's diesel-powered emergency generators are on the ground floor.
Mo, it seems as though I'm losing diesel fuel. I can't lose generators 4 and 5.
The floodwaters are rising by 1/3 of a meter an hour. At this rate, the generators will be swamped by morning. The hospital's emergency command center is unable to get a response from city authorities. So they call the State Emergency Center, 130 kilometers away in Baton Rouge. Mel Lagarde, a senior hospital executive, tries to find out whether the state can provide any kind of support or security.
Look, our generators be flooded in hours. And I've got kids on vents. I need to know if there's an evacuation plan for hospitals.
Lagarde learns that the entire city is in chaos. There's no help coming.
I'm sorry, Mel. You're on your own.
For Tulane Hospital, only one option remains.
Guys, hold up a sec. We need to evacuate.
Those papers around, guys.
The hospital is forced to organize its own evacuation. With ground routes flooded, the only way out is by air. Staff will have to find a way to fly Drew Schaff, William Wilson, and 19 other critical care patients to safety in the next few hours. By then, the emergency generators will either run out of fuel or be swamped by floodwater. The best bet is Acadian Ambulance Services, more than 200 kilometers away in Lafayette.
Look, I've got 13 neonatals, 4 PICUs, and 4 adults on vents.
Acadian's dispatcher alerts the company's flight paramedic, Mark Creswell. Within the hour, Creswell is loading his helicopter with supplies.
It was just something that was a sixth sense that said, bring plenty of clothes, bring a couple of $100 worth of food, bring several $100 in cash, and anything else you think you're gonna need for a week, and that's what I did.
But the winds are swirling in 60-kilometer gusts, enough to damage the aircraft upon landing. Even for a veteran pilot, it's just too dangerous to fly.
We knew our primary mission that morning was to evacuate babies. I knew I had to have my A game on.
While Mark Creswell sits grounded 200 kilometers away, the water is still rising in New Orleans, creeping ever closer to the emergency generators on the ground floor of Tulane Hospital.
They're on their way.
Downstairs in the hospital room, we got an issue here. There's water rising all over the place.
Pete, how much time do we have?
Probably about half an hour.
Early Tuesday morning, Senior Executive Mel Lagarde finds out that the hospital has to turn off the emergency generators on the ground floor. The rising floodwaters will short-circuit the machines within minutes.
Is there anything else you can do for me? We need at least 2 hours on this.
Yes, do we have any pumps available for us to pump out the water? Get Greg to give me some temporary electricity.
There's only one way left to keep the electricity flowing. Electrical workers fire up a portable generator truck in the street outside. The hospital has rented it in preparation for the hurricane. But if the water keeps rising, this generator will also become submerged. A nurse wakes baby Drew's parents in the middle of the night.
Steve, the hospital's flooding. We're evacuating, but I need you.
More alarming news for Steve and Brandy Schaff.
Okay?
Attention all staff, code yellow. Attention all staff, code yellow.
The hospital plans to evacuate their baby without them.
We didn't know they were evacuating at all. And she's like, they're gonna ship Drew out soon. Y'all need to come tell her bye. And I mean, I flew. I had pajamas on and didn't brush my teeth. I just ran down there.
Where are they taking my baby?
They don't know yet.
I was in shock. I mean, I ran down there and I was like, wait, explain this to me.
It's not easy to escape New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans is a swimming pool in and of itself. Water came in from the levees. There was no way for it to get back out again. It's a one-way street.
I've got some good news. We're flying out in a chopper, and they are super cool.
Are you coming with me?
Of course.
Nurse Jean Braham tells William about the evacuation. He tries not to alarm his young patient. William's evacuation will be exceptionally challenging. He'll need a specially equipped helicopter with medical equipment and a generator on board. The chopper must be large and powerful enough to accommodate William's 227-kilogram life support machine.
William Wilson was on a so-called biventricular assist device. That means it's a device that pumps blood from the pumping chamber on the right side, circulates it to the left side as it's oxygenated, and then to the body. A tube comes out of the right side of his heart into the machine. A tube goes to the main vessel, carrying blood to the body. So his heart is non-functional. His heart simply serves as a reservoir to collect blood for this machine.
Nurse Braham asks other staff to make sure each patient is evacuated with a 1-week supply of medicine and fluids. He spent 20 years in the Navy. Crisis management is second nature. The medicine dispenser has lost power and can't dispense any drugs. It's time to bend the rules.
We're leaving. Break open the machine. Now!
All right.
Tulane Hospital is now operating with limited air conditioning and lighting. The generator truck outside can only supply 40% of the hospital's electricity. From now on, only the hospital's emergency red sockets have power. They run the most essential services. One of them is the life support machine keeping Drew alive.
Ryan and Mira, Texas Children's Hospital, okay? Make sure it says okay, sick.
Dr. Asciutto tries to ease the anxiety of parents about to be separated from their children.
You're gonna be fine. And no one is gonna be lost or sent to the wrong hospital. I give you my word.
The staff come up with a system to make sure that every patient is accounted for once the crisis is over. The nurses improvise using simple but effective methods.
They realized that they were in control of the lives of these patients, and they had to do things not only urgently, but they had to use creativity to accomplish their goal. The goal was to get the patient out of the hospital, and they used their imagination to the fullest.
When Drew was being prepared for transport, one of the nurses came and she had her camera and she took a picture of all three of us and gave it to us so we could have it to take with us.
By now, floodwaters are threatening the one remaining backup generator outside. Dr. Asciutto and Tulane's staff have been on the phone for hours, calling hospitals outside New Orleans. They're trying to find places for the critical care patients.
Drew Schaff, S-C-H-A-A-F. She's post-op for an aortic obstruction. This kid is really sick. We have to get her out of here now. They'll take her. Dr. Gutierrez at Lafayette Children's.
Asciutto finally finds a place for Drew at a hospital in her hometown of Lafayette. Moving Drew without disturbing her life support equipment will be a delicate and risky job.
I need these tubes taped securely for transport. Drew's flying out by chopper. She's gonna be fine. Promise.
Drew has a large hole between the pumping chambers of her heart, so a band must be placed around her artery to reduce blood flow to the lungs. Because she is in such severe heart failure, she must be intubated. A tube in her trachea enables her to breathe.
In her case, intubation was very difficult because she had abnormal anatomy of her airway. It's always more difficult in a baby, and the smaller the baby, the more difficult the procedure. But in her case, she had the confounding factor of abnormal anatomy. So we were very fearful that if her tube came out, we would be in trouble.
In Lafayette, the wind has died down. 3 hours after paramedic Mark Creswell got the call, his air ambulance heads for Tulane Hospital. He's borrowed a critical piece of equipment from a local hospital. He'll need it to evacuate Drew Schaff.
I called a nurse at one of the local hospitals, an ICU manager, and I asked for their isolate, which is a form of an incubator with a lot of advanced life support gear. And they were readily able to give that to us, no questions asked.
Creswell flies over New Orleans just after dawn. He's stunned to see the city submerged below.
My first impression of Katrina was, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And how am I going to handle it?
There's no longer any air traffic control regulating flight over New Orleans. The possibility of a mid-air collision is on everyone's mind.
Essentially, we were flying blind. Had to use your eyes and keep an eye out for every aircraft around. There were literally dozens of Coast Guard and military aircraft on scene.
Creswell finally lands on the garage roof next to Tulane Hospital. He sees that the building is surrounded by almost 2 meters of water.
I knew that as fast as this water was coming up, they weren't going to have power much longer.
Nobody knows how quickly the water will rise and just when the generator will flood. Creswell does know he has to get 21 life support patients out of Tulane before the power goes out.
Good Lord. Nice to see you.
Everyone had looked like they had been through a terrorist incident. Their eyes were big. They looked like they had been in this incident for days and days and days. They were obviously scared, and the sense of urgency was real high.
As the flight paramedic, Creswell's in charge of the overall evacuation. But first, he has to decide who gets evacuated in what order. Creswell is asked to fly patients to various hospitals scattered hundreds of kilometers in all directions. He's frustrated. For every long-haul trip to a faraway hospital, his team could be making several shorter trips and evacuating more patients.
So the closer we were able to go, the better it would be to be able to get everyone out.
Morning. Okay. Okay, now, these are the patients we want. Now, we want the sick ones, starting with the littlest, because we have isolates coming in. Now, we want to load as many people as we can, so we need the sick, little ones matched with adults that can monitor themselves. No parents, no riders, and we're going to get this all done before you lose power.
It's an ambitious evacuation. Creswell will have to juggle an enormous amount of information. Who's the sickest? What does each patient weigh? Which rescue helicopter is equipped to carry them? He quickly decides which of the infants is top priority.
She's first.
He's picked Drew Schaff.
She was a very sick kid. I didn't know all the details, but I knew she was sick. You could see a big, huge surgical scar down her chest, lots of IV tubings on her, lots of bandages, and I knew that she was a priority, and this was the first kid we needed to get out. We needed to get her out now.
Staff prepare to move Drew from her hospital bed into the special portable incubator.
She was awake for the first time since her surgery, and so I was like, great, she's starting to wake up, and they're gonna put her in a little incubator in a helicopter and send her back.
Moving Drew is complicated and risky. If her breathing tube is accidentally knocked out during transport, she will die within 5 to 10 minutes. A respiratory specialist ensures that the tube is perfectly placed in her tiny trachea to minimize movement. Drew's heart also depends on life-saving medicine. After the transfer to the incubator, Drew's team monitors her oxygen saturation, heart rate, temperature, and respiration rate. They watch closely to make sure her skin color stays healthy. The slightest tinge of blue means immediate intervention.
I absolutely remember those last few minutes before they took her. It was hard. I mean, I was a mess. I was crying.
I said, look, we're gonna get through this. We gotta get ourselves together. Let's help out however we can. Just get your mind off it. Know your baby girl is gonna be fine, and we're gonna get you out of here. And so she held up really well.
After 5 minutes, Drew is considered stable. Now she can be transported to the helicopter. Getting to the makeshift helipad will be a journey in itself. Drew will have to be transported from the hospital's 4th floor down to the 2nd floor. Here, the rescuers will enter an elevated walkway that links the hospital to the parking garage next door. Then up another 6 floors to the garage roof. The elevator is the smoothest way to carry Drew down 2 floors. But as the rescue team enters, the door suddenly jams. Then slams shut before Brandy can get back in.
I like freaked out because, oh my God, they're in the elevator. I'm not gonna be able to see Drew again. And the nurses start, it's okay. We're gonna get her out. We're gonna get out. We're gonna get to you. It'll be okay. And the guy that was standing on the side of me, just helping, he pulled the doors open and everybody got out.
They decide it's too risky to use the elevator.
We're gonna need those flashlights.
They're forced to carry Drew in her 91-kilogram incubator down 2 flights of stairs. Steve isn't happy, but he knows they have no choice.
Careful!
The floors were sweating because they had lost ACs, so it was very slippery. Lights were flashing from the emergency lights, trying to come on and off. The air was just really stale, and it was, just kind of like something you'd see in a movie.
The team strains to keep the incubator perfectly balanced. The tiniest misstep, the most minuscule shift, could dislodge Drew's breathing tube.
Don't drop it!
Bringing Drew down the stairs in the incubator on the stretcher was very nerve-wracking. Knowing if we just, rock it or do anything wrong with it, ventilator down our throat kind of scared me.
It takes Drew's team more than 20 minutes just to get down 2 flights of stairs. Drew isn't out of danger yet. As they enter the raised walkway, the reality of their situation hits home.
When I came downstairs and we were walking across and I saw the water in the street, what really got my attention was the generators that were sitting outside, and the water was coming up to the bottom of the generators that are parked in 18-wheeler trailers. And I knew that Drew wasn't the only person on a ventilator at that time, and if they would lose electricity, I was kind of getting scared.
Drew's parents and her medical team managed to transport her as far as the parking garage next to the hospital. They head for the makeshift helipad on the garage roof.
And I just had to take a big gulp. It just, a little bit of fear just crept in. It's like, wow, this is pretty serious.
It takes them almost an hour to get Drew from her hospital bed to the waiting helicopter. One of the pilots suggests that Drew and another baby double up in the incubator to speed up the evacuation. But Drew's nurse recognizes the other child.
No, you can't put these 2 babies together. She's just got a tracheotomy. It's likely she's infectious.
It's another close call for baby Drew. Drew will travel with her nurse, but without her parents.
I'm sorry, I can't take you with her. There's just no room.
Well, when will I see Drew?
Mark Creswell can't tell Brandy when she'll be able to see her baby again.
One way or another, I'll get you there.
was gut-wrenching. I mean, there's nothing you can do because they're taking your baby away from you again.
"15-year-old William Wilson is still trapped at Tulane. Staff are trying to find a way to evacuate him along with his 227-kilogram life support machine. So far, they've not been able to find a big enough helicopter. It's hard to believe that things could get any worse. But now the hospital is battling more than Mother Nature. Looters are trying to force their way in.
It was like Baghdad on the Mississippi River.
They were just looting to steal stuff at that point. It wasn't, you know, like you need diapers for your child. It was a TV on a piece of plywood.
I know many of us were very angry about what was going on in the streets and what we were witnessing. We were ashamed. I was ashamed. I couldn't believe this was going on in our country.
Outsiders are trying to sneak in through the parking garage. Police rush to keep them out.
There was always the assumption that people needed their fix, the people that were addicted to medicines. So that could have been a reason to break into the hospital. They also saw helicopters coming and going. So they saw it as a means of rescue also, maybe.
All the while, Mark Creswell keeps the evacuation moving.
I mean, it was very exhilarating to see an individual wheeled up to a waiting helicopter, a critically ill child, placed on the helicopter, safely evacuated. And each time a child left, people would applaud.
He's directing pilots and helicopters from Louisiana and out of state as they land on the roof of the parking garage.
How much fuel you got left? How much weight can you take on this thing?
Creswell doesn't know how each helicopter is equipped until they actually land. That means that he can't plan ahead. He's forced to figure out on the spot which patient leaves next based on a mental calculation.
You got a neonate on board?
Then he determines the most efficient use of each helicopter.
Get me a neonate on a vent and a nurse that needs to go as far as Lafayette or Alexandria now!
Evacuation isn't going as quickly as Creswell would like. Only 3 to 4 helicopters at a time are allowed on the garage roof. It takes roughly an hour to move 2 patients. By 3 p.m., they've evacuated 13 patients on life support. Creswell uses a satellite phone to call his coordinator at Acadian Ambulance.
I need helicopters.
I called Mike Sonia. I said, man, I need everything you got. I need every helicopter you can find. I called my dad, who was a superintendent at a local oil company. I said, call all your friends, tell them we need all the helicopters. I knew a pilot in the Army, and I called him, and I said, man, call anybody you can at the Pentagon or whatever and get every Army helicopter you can. We're in a bind.
As helicopters come and go, Brandy pitches in, bringing food to the pilots. Part of Creswell's strategy to keep stranded parents calm.
We put them to work making ham sandwiches, and I kept their daughter that was 200 miles away off of their mind. They had a sense of purpose there. They weren't sitting around twiddling their thumbs. I'm quite sure it passed the time for them.
It kept our minds off of it for a few minutes.
To save time and keep his hands free, Creswell has written down the coordinates of each hospital on his own leg.
And it just stayed there. It was like a permanent reference card. And pilots would land, and It was so loud because of the turbines that you just point to them and they'd program the GPS in with the coordinates. And it was just one of the innovations that we came up with while we were over there.
The generator outside is still above water. But there's only enough fuel left to last until sunset. For the past 8 hours, Mark Creswell has been trying to find a way to reunite Brandy with her daughter. He flags down an empty supply helicopter that's not allowed to carry patients. The pilot says he's not supposed to have other people on board. But Creswell refuses to take no for an answer.
Mark Creswell was like, look, can you take these people? And he was like, I don't think I can, you know, I might get in trouble. And
there comes a time when you gotta throw the rule book out the window.
Creswell persuades the pilot to bend the rules and delivers on his promise to reunite Brandy and Steve with their baby.
he had the heart to just say, okay, these people really need to get to their baby and I'm gonna find a way. So thank you to Mark Creswell.
Just after sunset, William Wilson is still waiting to be evacuated. Suddenly, the emergency generator truck sputters and dies. It has run out of fuel. William's life support machine is now running on batteries.
Okay, there's only 25 minutes left in this battery.
If the device had been turned off within 30 seconds, he probably would have succumbed.
Hospital staff have brought a portable gas generator to the patio outside the neonatal ward. The cable is run into the room and quickly hooked up to William's machine before its batteries run out. But even this last-ditch maneuver is a temporary measure. Hospital volunteers think of a way to produce a few more precious liters of fuel for the generator. In the garage, they siphon it out of the car's gas tanks. It's been 14 hours since Tulane's evacuation order. Staff have still not found a helicopter for William and his machine. Then a glimmer of hope from a hospital in Arkansas.
Gotta go. That's perfect.
They have a chopper, and it's big enough. It's also equipped to transport a critically ill patient. It can evacuate William from Tulane Hospital.
It was heavy enough and large enough to fit the machine as well as carry it and the personnel out. The machine weighs 500 pounds. So that's kind of odd, hooked to a boy that weighs barely 125 pounds.
Just after dark, there are rumors of a new threat. Across the city, reports of random gunfire aimed at helicopters.
This was a real problem. Several helicopters arrived, turned around, and left because of it. At this point, many people became very, very upset.
No, we have gunfire here on the roof. We can't keep asking pilots to fly in here, Mel.
Mel Lagarde, in consultation with his staff and the pilots, makes a critical decision.
Okay, guys. I'm suspending all the flights until daylight, okay? We just can't risk it. We can't let anybody out.
But William's portable generator won't last until morning. So the hospital will have to make an exception and get him out tonight.
Don't forget, you promised me riding a chopper.
But evacuating William tonight depends on whether the pilot from Arkansas is willing to risk his own life.
We had learned that the FAA had, quote-unquote, shut down the airspace. And we made a call to Arkansas, and I spoke to their chief pilot, and he said, pilot's well experienced, he's going to fly in.
Midnight approaches. Hospital staff hear the sound of a lone helicopter.
They just flew in literally under the radar into the city, that was dark, and the only thing that they had was the lat-long coordinates of the hospital, of the garage, and that's how they found it.
As the helicopter gets closer, more spur-of-the-moment ingenuity. 4 cars are parked on the roof. Drivers crisscross their headlights so the Arkansas pilot knows where to land. But William's journey to the helipad will be even more difficult and life-threatening than Drew's. First, a spare version of William's life assist machine must be carried to the helicopter so that it can keep William alive during the flight.
My first thought, it can't be much harder than a refrigerator, right? Refrigerator's big, it's heavy. This machine's not as big, but it's very heavy. We got a dolly. We began to try and move it down the stairs, and it wasn't working. We nearly lost the machine.
Hey, buddy. Okay. These are them. Squeeze. Simple as that, okay?
William cannot be moved while connected to his machine.
At any moment, this young man had 2 tubes coming out of his heart. At any moment, if a tube had dislodged, it would have been instant death.
Promise.
So Nurse Braham will have to hand pump William's heart while he's wheeled over to the helipad. He will literally be taking William's life into his own hands.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
The 1, 2, 3 disconnect moment was one of the scariest moments of my life.
William's nurse isn't the only one who's scared.
He didn't let on a whole lot, but he got quiet, and that's when we could tell something was going on.
At the best of times, William's life assist machine only duplicates 50% of what his heart does. As Nurse Braham hand pumps his heart, that figure is reduced dramatically. He knows that the margin for error is slim.
You're not running any races, but you're alive. If I take this machine away and I began to do this manually, you're at about 40–50% of that. So you're looking at about 10% of your normal function on this.
As Nurse Braham and William arrive at the helipad, some unexpected news. William's machine won't fit inside the helicopter. As a result, it can't plug into the helicopter's power supply. William must continue to be hand-pumped. There is no alternative.
Which I was shocked by because they'd asked for dimensions and I'd measured everything as well as I could. And it wouldn't fit. And so the look was, what do we do?
With only a fraction of his normal blood flow, William is starting to feel sluggish. He's never been hand-pumped this long. If the wait continues much longer, William's heart will fail. His caregivers have seconds to make a decision.
What do we do? Do we continue on hand pumping, or do we try and fix this somehow? Do we shove it in?
Nurse Braham knows that staying at Tulane is not an option. It's time for some split-second ingenuity.
And then one of the paramedics, again, looked on the bottom, said, "Hey, these wheels come off."
The removal of the wheels is just enough to allow William's life assist machine to fit snugly in the helicopter.
We slid the machine in, plugged it up, started the engines, off we went.
It is after midnight before William and Nurse Braham can fly out. But at last, they're on their way to safety.
It was a tremendous relief for me for the doors to close, the engines to spool up, and to feel the aircraft lift off.
A few hours earlier, Steve and Brandy arrived at Lafayette Children's Hospital, anxious to find out what happened to their daughter Drew after she was evacuated. Brandy is reunited with her baby.
We got into the PICU and, you know, of course started crying again, and, you know, she's here, she's safe, thank God.
At Tulane Hospital, staff are exhausted but ecstatic. 21 of their critical care patients have been evacuated.
Not a single patient died. These were critically ill patients. A patient that was on a heart-lung machine that in 30 seconds would not have survived if something was disconnected. A patient who left the hospital with his chest open. A patient that was on a ventilator and was critically ill. Several patients that were on ventilators and critically ill. Every one of those patients not only survived, but did well.
After waiting 10 months for a new heart in New Orleans, William finally received one a month after he arrived in Houston.
William is doing very well now. Coincidentally, he went to another transplant center in Houston, Texas, and was transplanted 31 days after he arrived. So his story was successful in the end. He's doing great. He's growing up and growing older, I suppose.
Mark Creswell spent 9 more days in New Orleans, rescuing victims of Hurricane Katrina.
I did this interview, and he asked me what the most difficult task was. And I said, you know, on a regular day, a mass casualty incident, you triage the worst patients and you take them out first. You want to give everybody the best chance of living. And he said, essentially, you were playing God. And I wasn't playing God, I was playing paramedic. And that's what we do.
Drew Schaff successfully went through several more operations and is now a healthy, vibrant little girl.
Drew is a pistol. She gets into absolutely anything and everything she possibly can. I honestly think she's making up for the 4 months she was in the hospital and couldn't do absolutely anything. She's a mess, but she's great.
Over the course of a week, more than 1,200 people were evacuated from the roof of the parking garage next to Tulane Hospital, one of the largest evacuations of an American hospital in recent memory. 6 months after Drew Schaff and William Wilson were flown to safety, the hospital reopened.
Although when I drive by certain areas or go to certain areas of the hospital, there's a very beautiful pavilion in the hospital called the Riley Pavilion. And I cannot walk past that area and not look down and think about what I saw during Katrina. The water, the debris, and it's just shocking. It's something that just will never go away.
It was a happy ending in a city where thousands of hurricane evacuees are still waiting to return. 2 years after Katrina, some homes are still in ruins, and parts of the city remain vulnerable to flooding in serious storms.